Okay, in today's video, we're going to do a little bit of cleanup on our Svelte form. So we ported most of the functionality from the Iframe Phoenix live view version to Svelte. So we started with creating these functions in a context. We can now create a primitive, we can modify that component, and we can delete the entity. But there are some issues, such as when we're using the form, if we type invalid data, such as this, it won't take, but it won't generate an error. In fact, I think it may have crashed behind the scenes. Here, no match of right hand side there, you get an error. Change set component valid was false, so this was here under spaces 565 565. Yeah, I mean, I tried to do this, else error change set. This happens, return. Yeah, just return error in the change set. But I got this error. Else clause will never match because all patterns will. So I don't really understand that. What happens if I just keep that? It also crashed. No match of right hand side value. Action update. Oh, I think it's actually in the repo part. Change set. Alright, so if you do component change set, this will give you a change set. Change set equal this, and gives you a change set. I thought it was supposed to eat all the errors there. This fails at line 565. Yeah. It couldn't match the result because it errors piping this into this, so it crashed instead of returning an unmatched value out here. So we do get that value, and what if we just take that and pipe change set into go update. So the change set must look like what? Oh, true. Oh, wait a minute. I don't think I'm doing these right. Let's see. I don't think I'm using with right. Elixir with statement, I think, uses these left arrows. Yeah, you're using these left arrows. Okay. Undo. That's what it's complaining about. We have to do it like this. Okay, any with okay. Is that the only thing we're using with for? Inside AX, and it's got to be like a full turn with true. Okay, we used it here. This was fine. Okay, so that's the issue here. So whatever you're getting, just return that. Okay, it didn't crash, but it didn't take. So if we look at this again, I mean, we have to reload, but if we look at the grid position, it's still the old value. So that's one of the things here, is we need to add some kind of validation to it. And I have some low-hanging fruit, like remove the iframe. So let's remove the iframe. So we have a show under the templates for the space. So I think we could just remove all of this. Render the edit menu HTML. What was in there? This has styling for, okay, the body, how this stuff looks, space canvas. So we're going to want to keep some of this. And then we added toggle editing, allowed transparency, edit space menu. So I think we want this. We want space canvas, and I think that's it. Editing space, editing menu. Okay, so let's cut this part out, or just copy it. Copy that part and throw it into a style tag. That should retain the same behavior that we had before. Okay. Looks good. There's no menu. Iframe removed. We're just using this one over here now. Alright. This one's done. Now we want to nest components under the current entity, because the problem here is that when I click through here and I'm editing this, I kind of forget which one I selected here. So let's take a look at that Svelte component and close some of these menus. Let's look at the entity lists. So we have the container, we have add entity, we have entity list, and then we have this current entity here. So I think we can just take this thing and put it within the each entities. So we get the li, close li, and then we have you can delete the entity, so we can put it here. So what does that look like? So now we click here, click there. Whoops. Oh, we need to close it though, right? I'm confused. Each one of them have it expanded. If current entity. Oh, it's showing the same current entity. If current entity ID is equal to current entity and current entity ID is equal to entity.id, there you go. So we're only highlighting, and now it's kind of obvious. Whoop, no, these don't expand now. The highlighted component doesn't expand. So let's put this age. Alright, each current entity, okay, we can do entity components as components. Entity is now this entity. And the component, highlight component, okay. Not sure if that makes a difference. They should have been the same, I think. Okay, highlight component is getting called. But why aren't we expanding the form? I click here, let's highlight. Okay, let's zoom in here. Okay, we click there, we go highlight component. if highlighted. Is highlighted tests. I think we can now move this highlight component business into an entity. All right, so we have entity list. I think we need more components here. Let's split this out a bit. We have welcome. Now it's the menu overlay. All right, so this helps toggle the microphone, but there's also, it toggles the entity list. And entity list needs entity components. So okay, we'll start here. Add entity list. Each entities as entity. Let's just pull out and display an entity. So we'll move all of this up to the each as an entity. And we'll pass in entity. And we'll import entity from entities. And paste all this stuff. So we need to import a couple of things. Component for one. Okay, we need the export entity. Export entity. Then we need a function for when you highlight an entity. That can remain on the outside, I believe. So we'll move this out. Create a callback when you highlight entity. You will set the current entity, and then a current component will be null. So on click, we'll do, whoops, paste that. You'll highlight the entity. Yes, okay. When you click it, you'll highlight the entity. You'll highlight the entity. which sets the current entity, and then we need to say if it's highlighted or not. So we can just pass this along as, let's call it selected. So selected equals if the current entity ID, if the current entity and current entity ID is equal to entity ID, then selected will be true. Otherwise selected is false. So we'll pass this in as a prop, export let selected, that's a boolean. And we can add a class around this. Conditional class. Svelte conditional class. Class equals that, class selected equal just do this, class colon selected, class colon selected. What's here? Oh, language equal TS. Alright, so we don't need to do this if current entity stuff. We're always selected. No, our parent will know if we're selected. Okay, if we're selected. Oh, no, we do need to know. Okay, no, sorry. And we can just do if selected. If selected, that's when we show the components. Otherwise, just style that. Then we display the component. So we need the component, import component, component, and we need to know whether to highlight the component and we do need to manage this here because you have several components, and so we need to know who is the highlighted component. So we can grab this out of this part, highlight component, steal that, put this here, and we need a current component. So we'll take current component, and we need the request delete entity, take that. All right. And is highlighted this, so take that, put that here. We also need to import signal hub from hub. Okay. This gives us the entity. So parent, we're listening for current entity. We have a list of entities to begin with. We don't have a current selected entity. We're listening for entity created to add more to entities, and we filter out when entity is deleted. We can highlight the entity, and we don't have a current component, so highlight the entity just does that. We can add an entity. Each entity is this entity, so you can have an entity and then you pass in entity information. And when you click on this, we can say highlight the entity, console.log highlighting entity. I want to see if that is working. Selected. Alright, so does it even render? It does render. What happens when I click this? Clicking on this does nothing. Okay, so we need, I don't think we can use an on click on a custom component. We might need to pass highlight entity in as a function. Highlight entity. So we'll pass that in as a function. Export let highlight entity. I think we're passing this in as selected. Oh wait, no, that's for the component. Highlight entity is a function, so we're going to say, yes, when you click on entity name, then we'll do an on click here. Which we'll call highlight entity. Pass in the entity, which we're getting from there. So now let's test it again. When I click it, I hope to see some console log. Come on, yes. Highlight entity. Highlight entity. Oh, even this works now. That's a little bit better. I kind of wish it was indented according to UL. So let's see. For each component, let's do a throw this around the whole each. You don't need the horizontal row. Then for every component, instead of div, we'll wrap the whole thing. We'll wrap the whole thing in a line item. So visually it should indent now. Okay, that's better. You can even add a third layer of indentation for each one of these things. So component. So we have entity. Entity has a list of component list. And each component is an li. But then each I guess object value is another indented list. So we can do the whole thing like this. Okay, I think it's more clear now. Alright, so this box should be 0000, should be red. Oh, maybe there's another box on top of it. Delete that, and there we go. Okay, make it green. Okay. Alright, so the nested components under the current entity did some cleanup. I want to change the cursor for the delete button. It should be easy to do. So that lives inside an entity. On click, so this span we'll call a class equal delete entity. We'll add a style for it. Style delete entity and cursor pointer. There we go. Actually, these are also pointable. So we should have this also be a pointer, which is the entity name, class entity name. Whoops. Entity name, cursor, pointer. So now these are also pointers. And when this is selected, maybe this can be bolder than the rest. Well, let's highlight it. This. Do we now have a selected class? This one is selected. This one is not selected. Yeah, so class selected. Dot selected. How about entity name? Font. Weight. More bold. Didn't do it. Oh, it is? It's here. Font weight on. Hold on. Entity name within selected. I think this is saying you have specificity. Yeah, that's right. Something else and has selected, and then you have selected. Versus if you have a comma here, this means that you have to have both, right? Or either independently. So this is more specific. Font weight. Can you just say bold? Well, current entity is not defined. Got an error here. Line 13. No, those aren't recent errors. Font weight bold. How about color comes red? Okay. Alright, it's doing something now. Whatever. Alright. CSS is not my forte. We'll get somebody to style this later. Change the cursor. Yes. Okay. Use global CSS styles for the modal. Yes. So we have modals on a couple of places. One is the welcome modal and modal content. And then we have it under the mic. We have modal and modal content. So I'm going to just remove this part. And let's see, menu overlay doesn't have that. But welcome, we can just say global. I think that's how you do it, and global. And I think that means you're not duplicating the style. So that still looks good. And let's close the tab. Close the tab. Open the tab. So a whole new session. Yeah, that still looks good. And this still works. That's good. And finally, we come to add validation for the form fields. So I found a blog post about validation. Svelte forms lib. Okay, so you can add, you can call yup, and Svelte forms lib, and then you can create a form that gives you back some, I guess, handlers, and then you can use those handlers within the form, showing errors if you have them. And I kind of want to do this around the components, because the component here, I guess if the component type is a known type, then we can validate. And so far we just have X, Y, and Z. And so I want them to be numbers. And then we also have color, which I want that to be a string. Regex. Each object keys. So maybe we can bind this, pull this out into another component. We're highlighting the component, but this is the component form. Kind of want to do something like this. Component form. All right, first let's split it out into component form. Component form. And I want to grab this. Let's say component form. We'll import form from component form. And in component form, we'll paste this. We need the component. So give us the component, please. Component. So component. Okay, so as you modify these things bind into the component data, and they're part of the parent form. So does this still work? Or is it changing? Let's move the box, or change the box's color. Okay, that seems to still work. Move this position, move it over, give it a refresh. It seems to have persisted. Okay, I guess that works. Okay. Component. Okay, so only if we're highlighted. And what else? If component type is like position, then I want to do something else. We'll do this. If expected, what if we do svelte, if else. Colon else. Okay. And here I want to do the vector 3 component form. I want to check check if in array includes fruits includes that. Okay, so if position, rotation, scale includes component type, then do that. Otherwise do that. So create me a vector3 component form, and it's very similar to the component form. Well, let's start off that way. There's an error somewhere. Vector3 component form is not defined. Vector3 component form, component, import vector3 component form from there. Just to distinguish it, let's say x3 vector x3. So position has it, but if we go to color, it does not have it. Position, it will have it. Okay. And now I want to add some validation to this particular flavor of this form. So how do we do that? Well, looks like we need to install Yup and Svelte Forms Live. Okay, so let's do that. So we'll go to our assets, npm install yup dash save dash and yeah, sure. The other thing we need is Svelte Forms lib. Svelte Forms lib. With these two things, import them. Oh, copied. Whoa, I don't want to copy all of that. Import create form from Svelte form forms and import everything as yup from yup. Import everything as yup from yup. And then we create this form. All right, in the JavaScript part, const form errors. I don't think we're using state. Handle change. Handle submit. We don't have a form in here. So maybe we should push the form handling in here, maybe. Okay, equal create form, and it takes a configuration. Of course, initial values are going to be x, which is component data x, y y, z component data z. And we're going to validate this. Validation schema is going to be yep, object. Here's the shape. And oops, dot shape. And it takes a configuration for x, which is yup dot number, and it's required. Y is a yup number, it's required. Z, yup number, and required. And what on submit on submit will do something. So we have this form, then we got to use it on this form. So I think this component should include the whole form, which means that the parent should just send in an update function. That's all this form is doing. So we'll just yeah, you can put the form in the UL. Nothing says you can't do that. So why don't we just put in update here. And we'll take this away. Take this away. Take this away. So update is just calling this with the updated component data. Save this away. Go to vector form. Allow it to take an update. Export let update. And on submit, we'll just call update. So paste this. We have a form. let's paste it inside the, yeah, we need it outside there. That's fine. Handle submit or handle change on change. Sure, handle change, we'll say handle change. On submit, handle submit, and on blur, so we need errors around each of them, around X, Y, and Z. So then it's the key is going to be X, so we can just do if errors X, and we can say small errors, sorry, it should be key. So if you have any errors, show the error below. We got the name. On change should do handle change. So okay, they have on change for every value. They don't have an on change for the form. They have an on change for every value. On change equal handle change. I don't know if ID is important. Key. Name is also key. Value. Okay, I have no idea if this will work. Let's see. Okay. Server. Shape builder. That's an erroneous import. Why do we have this? Svelte vector 3. Alright, that's not supposed to be there. Okay. Okay. So on change doesn't activate per keystroke. Is one okay? One is okay. And that is okay. Space, space. That's not okay. Okay. Getting there. 2. So if we switch it, go back to the position of the cone. What is it? I don't think it did it. So it didn't call our function. And they'll submit. Suppose the console log something. Console log some values. So if I do 3.5 enter, is it the prevent default that's open it up? Grid. Cone. Position. 3. Enter. It's not letting me. It's not letting me submit the form. Let's see, on submit, handle submit, draw number and required. Button type submit, bind, on blur, on change. On blur. Errors. Change on submit form. $sign form. Okay. Bind value. Does that make a difference? $sign form key. Don't think that makes a difference, right? No, it's not sending it through. Alright, I might have to do more debugging to find out what's going on here. We have the create form, and then it's supposed to do some validation here, but the onSubmit doesn't seem to be called. I never see this being called. In this example, create the form. Get a form, handle change, handle submit, create a form, bind the values, use ID and name, and doing onBlur is validating, but onSubmit, maybe it has to. What if we just call update? And I don't think we need the onBlur for this, right? Maybe we do. Update. onSubmit, let's console log something. Console log hi. Oh, not that one. Under the number. No. It won't let me submit the form. Okay. Custom validation. onSubmit. Time to Google. Svelte forms lib. Svelte forms lib not submitting form. Should be that simple. I just have form on submit, calling a function. I do not understand. Let's inspect. Form X, Y, yeah. Modify these. Y must be a number. Oh yeah. So yeah, you can't submit it. It's not a number. It must think the form is not valid somehow. Let's add a submit button maybe. Form. How do they do it? Submit. Button. Type is submit. Well, that did it. Hi. Svelte forms lib allow submit on enter. So I wonder if it's because the li is around each of these. Let's remove this li. I don't know if it is, but still have the submit. It should say hi. We got it to say hi, and we got it to submit, I think. I want to lift this up. it called high. Alright, so we want to prevent default. Prevent default so that it won't change focus. Cone, position, 1, enter. Okay, it does call high. Okay, and call update. Cone, position, 1, enter. Okay, what happened here? High, we get modify with broadcast. Getting component. Okay, it called it. Oh, okay. The binding didn't work. It didn't bind into the thing we wanted. Particularly when we had it as component data key. Position. If I put A, yeah, that didn't work. But if I do 2, okay, now it works. Or I do like 2 and then change focus. No. So the handle change on blur for this should do a handle submit. If you leave, okay, so that's not actually validating on every one. Now it's validating. Okay. And here it's making a API request just for me changing around here, even though I didn't change, I didn't change anything. It's like I need to keep track of it being dirty or not. So not super liking this diff, this forms business yet. Okay, I'll do some more research.